Hello, my name's Olurotimi Osha. I'm continuing with Expose June. I'm dubbing June 2026 as a month of exposés. Today I'm discussing the story of Herman and Roma Rosenblatt, um, who told a romance story of their Holocaust survival, and which Oprah Winfrey went on to dub as the single greatest love story ever told on air. Unfortunately, it turned out to be a hoax. Now, I want to be cautious and respectful in treating the story of Herman Rosenblatt, because Herman Rosenblatt happened to be, unlike the other fraudsters that I've discussed, he happened to have actually been a child prisoner in concentration camps in Germany during. So he was a Holocaust survivor. He didn't need to embellish his story like he did by telling a a love story, a romance story that never happened, and of course, this unfortunately had the fallout of overshadowing his true Holocaust story. So um, Herman Rosenblatt was a real uh, child prisoner in the Buchenwald concentration camp near Berlin, and he was in the subcamp of Schlieben. Um, and I want to just give a quick disclaimer, because stories that turn out to be Holocaust hoaxes, they tend to add fodder to um, you know Holocaust deniers, right? And of course, it also has a tendency of making the public, certain sections of the public, uh, inured to the tragic circumstances of victims of abuse and human rights violations. I've been a victim of a hate crime myself, uh, but I think, as much as it is for victims and other allies of victims of hate crime and people who are against human rights violations, to speak up and narrate the true tragic uh, tragedies of human rights violations and atrocities that happen in our world, so that our world can be a better place. At the same time, we shouldn't try to cover up or minimize the hoaxes and the scams, like the unfortunate hoax of Roma and Herman Rosenblatt, who was a real Holocaust survivor. Um, so I'm going to tell his story. Of course, Oprah, after she learned that Herman Rosenblatt's romance story about the Holocaust was a fabrication, she did go on air and expressed her disappointment, saying the lies just got bigger and bigger. Now, because of the sensitive nature of this story, I'm going to break it up in several different portions, and because I'm particularly sensitive to the Holocaust story, because I was fortunate to have been a Holocaust study fellow at Columbia University's Institute for Israel and Jewish Studies. And so I learned a great deal, and I was the only black person in my cohort, in my class, right? I was in the course that I took, I was the only black person. Then the only other person who was non-Jewish was an Indian female, and of course, I learned a great deal. And so, and when we dealt with the literature, we learned about so many hoaxes, in addition to the uh, the the heroic stories of people like Elie Wiesel, Primo Levi, but there were also the hoaxes as well, and there were also those people, even Jewish people, who collaborated with the Nazis against other Jews who, whom they exposed and helped cart off to concentration camps. So I learned a lot, and of course, I've said the purpose of my platform is for education, and telling the story of the Holocaust is very important. Just as much as I tell the story of racism in America, I tell the story of police brutality, which I've suffered. The police brutality I suffered was a result of a hate crime by Montgomery County's racist police department, and of course, racist judges, corrupt judges in Montgomery County, like Judge James Bonifant. But today I want to focus on the Holocaust story, and but I want to, for the sake of time, and in order to be able to treat the discussion respectfully, I'm going to break it up into different segments. So, Herman Rosenblatt, Herman Rosenblatt, the story he told was of him being a child soldier, he and his brothers in Buchenwald, and in the subcamp of Schlieben, right, during the Second World War. Now, he talked about how someone, a girl threw apples over a fence, and this kept him alive for 6 months, because she came every day and threw an apple over the fence for him. She was a young girl, and one day he told her not to come again, because he was being shipped out of the Schlieben subcamp to another concentration camp in Czechoslovakia. Eventually, the Allied forces did occupy and take over Germany, and he was freed. And then he found his way to New York, where he learned a new craft. He became an electronics repairman, and at some point he joined the army. I think he served in the Korean War. So this is a man who did really have a remarkable life, a heroic, honorable life. And there's a reason, like I said, I want to be able to treat this in several videos, because I want to be able to address his motivation, because people have espoused different motives for his embellishing his true Holocaust story and creating an entirely fabricated one that, that tends to discredit other Holocaust survivors, and it has a tendency to unfortunately diminish his own tragic Holocaust survival. Even though people who are sensitive and understanding will understand that regardless of the embellishments and the scam that he pulled off, he still was a hero and a survivor. But again, I'm going to treat that in other videos. So he did join, in his story, he did join the U.S. Army and served in the Korean War. And one day he, in New York, a friend of his, I think he called his name Sid or something, a friend of his in any event, asked him to come on a, blind date with him. They were going to double date and have a blind date. He was reluctant, but eventually he goes along. And so he meets Roma, and they start discussing. And so he finds out that, both of them find out that, that they had been in Germany during the Nazi era, during the Holocaust era. And so they inquired of each other what they were doing. And Roma, described her own experience, that she and her family, she was a young girl, and she and her family had, been given uh, fake papers. She called it in the story. It's called Aryan papers. So passing them off as non-Jewish because she was Jewish, like he was Jewish, and so that a priest had helped them get Aryan papers, as she called them, indicating that they were non-Jewish, and they had worked as slave laborers, um, at a village, near a concentration camp. And she told him how she had, you know, her experience throwing an apple, that she met a scrawny Jewish prisoner at a concentration camp in Buchenwald, and she'd thrown in Schlieben, and she'd been throwing in this sub camp of Schlieben, and she'd been throwing an apple over the fence every day for 6 months to help him survive. And he was stunned because he was the person, and so he proposed to her right there, on that day, that he was never going to let her go. And of course, that was their story. They made it to Oprah in 1996, and she invited them again in 2007, where he proposed to her a second time. They had been married for a long time, I think about 50 years. And so he proposed to her a second time. However, there was a dogged, a resourceful professor of Jewish, a historian at Michigan State University, who was a scholar of the Holocaust, and he was a particular specialist in the Buchenwald concentration camp. I think he was director of Jewish studies. His name was Professor Ken Walzer, and so he immediately said the entire story was a hoax, and he ended up exposing the entire story as a fabrication. However, because of the sort of promotion and acclaim, fame, and public attention that Herman and Roma Rosenblatt had received, they had been able to garner a substantial book and film deal. In fact, they'd already released a child story, right? A child children's program of romanticizing the love story of the Holocaust, and apparently they had a package of about $25 million, right, in movies and book packages. The book deal was $100,000, and his publisher was a Solomon, who was going to do a film as well. Eventually, of course, they canceled the plans to publish his memoirs, and there was a scandal, and of course he was taken to court. Now, I'm going to do another video and talk about his motivation, why it was suggested that he discredited and diminished his own true Holocaust story by creating a fabrication, and I'll do that in a subsequent video, and give my tuppence and what historians have said about his fabrication. In any event, I'm going to stop this here, and I'll continue with another video, as I said, just elaborating on his motives. My name is Olurotimi Osha, and I'll keep you posted. Thank you.